slide is going to outline the full vision for building a sound policy that is evidence-based, data-driven, and together I am excited to take on the journey with you. My life has not been much different than a typical person who lives on the east side of outside poverty, abuse, and trauma. And that's why I'm running for mayor. I'm a registered nurse who works both in critical care and Buffalo Public Schools. I'm an accomplished executive director of affordable housing, permanently affordable housing that was democratically led with deep community ties. And I am the endorsed Democratic nominee for mayor of Buffalo. When I'm mayor, we're going to finally tackle public safety. Violent crime is as high as it's ever been. We are going to implement data-driven, evidence-based programs that get to the root causes of violent crime. When I'm mayor, we're finally going to tackle our affordable housing crisis. We're going to stop padding the pockets of wealthy and corporate developers and put investments in our neighborhoods, making sure that we house all Buffalonians in a healthy, dignified manner. When I'm mayor, we are finally going to tackle poverty. Buffalo remains the third poorest city of its size in the country. We're going to focus on creating good, green, union wage jobs. We're going to tackle our childhood-led issues, and we are going to build a safe and healthy Buffalo together.
Welcome. Good evening. I want to thank the Association of Black Journalists, WUFO, WKBW, and everyone involved in making this debate possible tonight. For almost 16 years, I have had the honor and privilege of serving the residents of Buffalo as your mayor. Together, we have worked to build a city that was financial population for the first time in 70 years. I want to just let you know that my family and I deeply and truly love the city of Buffalo. As a homeowner on Buffalo's east side for 35 years, I know the work that has gone into improving and strengthening neighborhoods all across the city of Buffalo. We cut taxes by 16%. We created over 2,200 units of new affordable housing. We expanded youth employment and youth job opportunities and hired the most diverse workforce in the history of the city of Buffalo. We did all of this while overcoming the challenges posed by the Great Recession, by a global health pandemic, and national disruption over systemic racial injustice. Through it all, I was confident that we would overcome these challenges and overcome these obstacles because we would solve them together. Tonight, I will lay out more of my strategic plan to create more jobs for the city of Buffalo, to build more affordable housing in our city.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carlisle.
I'm Ben Carlisle, and it's great to be here. After nearly 16 years of higher ground, this city desperately needs a change in leadership. But if you believe what you hear on your TV, you only have two choices for mayor: socialism or the status quo. Well, I refuse to accept that false choice of 4 more years of Biden ground or a 4-year experiment to socialism and defunding the police. The change India Walton proposes will bring Buffalo's renaissance to a halt. I'll keep our renaissance alive and thriving. Everyone knows what it takes to get a project developed or construction bid accepted under Byron Brown's corrupt regime. But what India Walton is proposing almost makes Byron Brown's cronyism seem appealing. I've been a registered Democrat since I could vote. When the Democrats lost me in 2020, they embraced riots, looting, defunding the police, closing down our schools, our churches, and our small businesses. And most frightening of all, socialism. I haven't decided what new party, if any, I want to join. So I'm not running as a Republican or a Democrat, just a conservative local Buffalonian. I'll use my experience as a litigation attorney to get things done. Half the civil litigation involves courtroom arguments, but an equally important part of the job requires the ability to effectively negotiate on behalf of your client. This city will be my client, and I will be a tenacious advocate for you. It's time we leave the parties and come together. The parties are in the business of dividing us up. I reject that. I also reject the premise that Buffalo is a terrible place that requires a massive increase in government spending. My wife is Amos from India. She came here when she was 18. To get ahead in Buffalo without massive governmental intervention. It's a lie. What it takes is a dream and hard work. Fighting for it. If you're as fed up with party politics as I am, I hope you'll join me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Jasmine House,
Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Jazz Miles, and I appreciate your taking your time to be here tonight to hear what we have to say. I'm going to start with the plain and simple truth. After the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, President Andrew Johnson, a Democrat, facilitated the growth of the Ku Klux Klan, the Jim Crow situation, and the Black Codes. The Democratic Party fought against the Civil Rights Act brought by the Republican Party in 1875. The majority of the moves made by the Democratic Party in the 1870s was to stop men like Robert Elliott and Robert Small and others, the more than 1,500 black men that were elected officials in the Republican Party leadership. At the 1924 National Convention, the Democratic National Convention in Madison Square Garden, the Democrats had the Ku Klux Klan there in full regalia and promenade. After the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Baines Johnson said to his constituents, if you stick with me, we'll have them, and he didn't say them, but we'll have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years. In 1964, Hillary Clinton's mentor, Robert Byrd, former Klansman, filibustered the Civil Rights Bill for 24 straight hours, keeping one foot on the chamber floor and one foot behind the curtain when necessary when he had to go relieve himself. In 1964, Buffalo had its first Democrat mayor and has been a Democrat mayor in Buffalo since 1964. Coincidentally enough, in 1975, the Democratic Party took over the state assembly in New York State and has had that majority since 1975. The 1964 Civil Rights Bill came up again for a vote and was filibustered more than 50 days by the Democratic Party. We have heard since 1990 that we are predators by Joe Biden and would turn his neighborhood into a jungle. Super predators by Hillary Clinton, who upped the ante. And they both said we could talk about how they got this way at another day or another time. Well, today is that day and time. Because Byron Brown, you and the Democratic Party have failed this city. We have come in the top 10 on Forbes list of the most dangerous cities in America under your 16 years, my brother. So I need you to explain that without blaming the Republicans, without blaming Trump, and without blaming COVID. Explain how we came in the top 10 of the most dangerous city in America in 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Now, before we begin our questioning, just want to remind all of our viewers and listeners that you can share your questions at hashtag Buffalo Debate 2020. We also have cards for our audience members to fill out the questions. My colleague Angelica Morrison will pass them out and collect them. So now for our questions from our panel of journalists. First, we will have Deirdre Williams asking the first question of candidate India Walton.
Ms. Walton, we hear the fund the police, reallocate the police budget. This is all police reform, but how do you do it? What stays, what goes, and will there be enough money for police training based on how you want to reallocate funding for police?
Thank you for your question. The fact of the matter is I have a campaign on defund the police. There's one person up here that's been defunding our community that's caused crime to run rampant over the last 5 years. We've been defunding community centers. Our schools were closed this summer. We've been defunding senior and youth services. My plan is to free police to do police work, which is solving crime, investigating crime, and keeping our community safe.
budget to meet your objectives?
The first thing we do is we stop police from being dog catchers, homelessness outreach, mental health counselors, and we put professionals into those roles that is their job to do. We cut police overtime. We can end the militarization. We don't need tanks on the streets when people peacefully protest. There are lots of ways. And under Walton administration, we're gonna have a transparent budget process so that we'll be able to tackle those issues head on.
That's the question. We're gonna have all three candidates answer that question.
Mayor Brown, would you like to answer that question?
Yes. First, let me just say, I did not get the full 2 minutes at the beginning. If you listen to how that went, I didn't get a full 2 minutes. But India Walton is completely wrong when she says she hasn't campaigned on defunding police. She said that she would cut $7.5 million from the police department budget, which is clearly defunding police, and that would result in 100 less police officers on the streets of this community. Also, the 3 most dangerous calls that police officers violence are mental health calls and traffic stops. Ms. Walton proposes to not have police engaged in any of those areas, putting citizens at risk to try to do those dangerous jobs.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. We don't have instant replay, so I was flexible on your answer to that. This was a personal attack on India Walton. We will just say that you have, Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds to rebut what the mayor just said, but there is no counter rebuttal. You have 30 seconds.
The $7.5 million my opponent is referencing comes from a very good study that was put out by the Partnership for the Public Good, that after a great audit of the police budget suggests that positions can be eliminated through attrition and the budget can be decreased by decreasing overtime and properly staffing the police department. That's not defunding, that's a responsible use of taxpayer dollars.
I would also like to remind our audience, we're trying to move along as quickly as we can. Please hold your applause and your cheering so we can get as many questions in here as we possibly can. Mr. Carlisle, would you like to answer the same question?
Sure, thank you. I think at a time when violent crime is at an all-time high in the city, talking about eliminating or defunding or reallocating resources from our Buffalo Police Department is a really reckless idea. In 2020, shootings were up by 90% compared to just the prior year, 2019. In just January and February of this year, 53 people were shot in those 2 months, and 9 of them were teenagers, kids. January and February, kids, 9 of them were shot in the streets of Buffalo. They should have been in school, but they weren't, because the Democrats locked down our schools, they locked down our city. And what happens when no one's going to work, when no one's going to school? They're out wandering the streets aimlessly, just like they've been in school. The increase in crime is directly attributed to closing down our schools and closing down our businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Jazz, would you like to answer the question?
There will be no defunding of the Buffalo Police Department under Jazz Miles' administration. That's first and foremost. The number one thing that's going to happen is we are going to eliminate Buffalo as being a sanctuary city. One of the biggest problems with the crime that happens in this city is how it happens from people that shouldn't even be here. Outsiders coming into Buffalo and causing disruption. So we eliminate one of the main causes of that problem, Buffalo being a sanctuary city. We can put a cap on the crime, take some of the pressure off the Buffalo Police Department, and they can focus on the crime that's absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Our next question is,
And those tanks that you talked about came from your buddy Barack Obama. Barack Obama put tanks in the city of Buffalo, and the whole city applauded. The media and everyone applauded when that military equipment got here.
okay, our next questioner will be Claudia Ewing from WTRC. First question goes to Mayor Brown.
So this question will be for all of the candidates. So this is the specific question. What makes you qualified to be mayor of the second largest city, and what's your experience in managing government, handling multi-million-dollar budgets, working with big developers, because that has to be done, So Mayor Brown, obviously, you are the mayor, you have the experience, but why should you serve another 4 years? Your primary campaign was almost non-existent, so what will you do differently?
As mayor of the city of Buffalo, I have successfully managed the finances of the city. We have cut the tax rate in the city of Buffalo to the lowest level in 30 years. We have one of the highest credit ratings in the city of Buffalo in 30 years. We have hired the most diverse workforce in the city of Buffalo. Property values have gone up in the city of Buffalo, and there has been over $8 billion of development in the city during my tenure as mayor. I will also say that prior to running for any office, I was a senior staffer in city, county, and state government, went on from there to serve 3 terms as a city council member, 3 terms as a member of the New York State Senate, and now I'm in my 4th term as mayor.
Mr. Carlisle, would you like to answer that?
I should just say right at the outset, I have absolutely zero experience in politics. I've never pandered, I've never fear-mongered, I've never wasted taxpayer dollars on propaganda and war. I'm running for mayor because the people of Buffalo shouldn't have to choose between someone who's done that for the last 16 years or socialists.
Mr. Miles, would you like to answer this?
So I'm running for mayor because I want to give the residents of this city a choice. It's not very often that a Republican runs in the city, but I think it's vital that people have an option. Every election matters, but this one is special. So Byron Brown was unable to accept the response of the people. It's your city, it's your voice. He was unable to accept that in primary. Got a lawyer, all the litigation, et cetera, et cetera. As soon as he thought his time was taken, jumped right on it. We need better representatives for the city of Buffalo. Buffalo deserves better representation. People that will stand up for you. I, Jazz Miles, will have Buffalo's back from the front because I'm not going to let outsiders come into this city and do us wrong or destroy anything. I'm not going to give a bunch of garble about what I've done, and we're on the Forbes list of the top 10 most dangerous cities after 2019. There's no escaping that. Top 10 most dangerous cities, Buffalo, New York, 2019, and still no explanation of how we got there.
Mayor, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
So from 2006 to 2019, crime overall in the city of Buffalo went down year after year after year. All cities, unfortunately, during the pandemic have experienced an increase in violent crime. We have proven strategies that we're working to reduce crime. Now that we're coming through the pandemic, we will re-implement those strategies.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Ms. Walton, would you like to answer that question?
I'd love to. I don't have government experience, but as I said before, I'm a registered nurse. And what I learned was that we plan, we implement, and we evaluate. And what has not happened over the last 16 years is an evaluation of how we're spending our money, where we're putting our priorities, and that needs to happen. When something isn't working, then we need change. I want to address some of the stats that have just been said. Homicide rates are up 6 of the last 7 years. This year, the S&P actually lowered the city's financial outlook to negative, and Fitch downgraded our credit rating twice, most recently in 2020. Cutting taxes means that we are not funding municipal services like trash pickup and snow removal. So let's think about what's actually being said, and let's not allow the wool to keep being pulled over our eyes.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Next question posed by Lee Pettigrew of W. No. Mr. Miles, we're going to keep order here. That was not interpreted as a personal attack. So we are going to move on to our next question. Panelists, Lee Pettigrew of WUFO, and the first answer will be from Ben Carlisle.
Mr. Carlisle, when it comes to development, do you think the city has achieved the right balance between the medical campus, downtown waterfront and neighborhoods? If not, how would you change that focus? What are some of the economic development plans for the east side of Buffalo?
My plan for the east side of Buffalo, the west side of Buffalo, all parts of Buffalo is the same. It's to bring transparency back to the city hall, and to make sure that everybody, every citizen, every developer gets a fair shake. Everyone knows what it takes in Buffalo to get things developed. There's a handful of developers, they all have back deals, there's cronyism, and that's how things get done in the city. When I'm mayor, no one is going to be cutting the line at City Hall. Everyone, every developer will be treated equally. And the handful of developers who are out there who are getting special treatments right now, they don't need to worry. I'm not gonna be mean to them. I'm just gonna treat them like everybody else. They're gonna have to learn how to be treated like everybody else.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Myers.
So part of the development problem in Buffalo, New York is the houses, the dilapidated ones that need to be torn down, the exorbitant cost that they claim that it takes to tear down a house. And then we have homes that were just built on Jefferson and Sycamore just within the last 20 years or so. Are they being torn down or something like that? What's going on with the property in Buffalo, New York, where developers get to come in, buy property on the cheap, especially after the pandemic that they want to blame everything on. Developers are going to buy this property on the cheap. It's not going to give the average Buffalo citizen a chance to own a home for them to be able to take care of themselves. Now, owning a home is something else that also does not happen under socialism. So if you're voting for the socialist ticket, you don't get to own a home. They do not like property owners. They do not like free speech. Just so we can clear this up straight off the point. But we need to tear down these dilapidated homes, and it will take care of some of the crime that happens in our city. It will give a better look to our city, and we need to know who the developers are and that they're here for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Walton, would you like to answer that question?
I certainly would. My last job was as founding executive director of an organization where we built permanently affordable housing in the Fruit Belt neighborhood that was higher quality than any affordable housing we've seen in the last decade. I'm very proud of that. I'm not anti-development. I am anti-development with displacement. We can do smart development that keeps neighborhoods intact, that creates mixed income neighborhoods with high quality amenities, and we can do it without draining taxpayers. If a developer wants to develop something using a tax subsidy or our tax dollars, I believe that there should be a legally binding community benefits agreement, and there should be ongoing support for the surrounding neighborhoods. If that is what you call socialism, then sign me up. And I don't think there's too many people in this room would disagree. Let's stop mischaracterizing who I am and what I believe. Ask more questions and read the report.
Again, I'm going to remind the audience, we've got a lot of questions coming in online. We have, no, I don't consider that a personal attack. We have some more questions that are coming in online. Some more questions from our audience with the file cards. The cheers and the applause actually slows us down. These are questions we can get in, and we lose time for those questions. So, Mayor Brown, would you like to answer that question?
What Ms. Walton just said about the Fruit Belt Land Trust and her several years of managing that organization is absolutely false. Public records show that the Fruit Belt Land Trust did not build a single house. So I'd like her to explain how she was such a successful executive director of the Fruit Belt Land Trust that built not one single house. So what she just said was completely false.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds.
I would love to respond. It's amazing that in your own city, you don't know what's going on. We definitely built 2 houses. The addresses are 162 and 166 Rose. We did it in partnership with Habitat for Humanity because we secured an $800,000 grant from Enterprise Community Foundation, and the city refused to let us pursue a bigger project. So we had to settle for 2 houses, and we had to partner with Habitat for Humanity on the domain of the city of Buffalo, which you force us to pay market rate for city-owned land to build affordable housing that serves the public good. So let's talk about that.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Thank you. Now, Taylor Evans of WKBW7 has we'll start off with one, possibly 2 questions that came in online.
So this is a question from the audience, actually. So the first one will go to Mr. Carlisle. There's a question for everyone. Should there be term limits for the mayor of Buffalo?
Absolutely. You know, in my platform, I am campaigning on a 2-term limit, not just for the mayor of Buffalo, but for any elected position in the city of Buffalo. In my opinion, Mayor Brown is the poster child for why we desperately need term limits. And just very quickly, I want to touch back on something else. Ms. Walton seems to be very confused why she calls herself a socialist, and we are all terrified that she'll implement socialist policies. She told us we haven't read books. I've read books on socialism. That's why I'm terrified. If you're not a socialist, why do you call yourself a socialist? Why do you have to make everyone in Buffalo terrified that you're gonna run as a socialist? If you are a Christian, people assume that you believe in Christ. If you say, well, I'm a Christian, but I don't believe in that Christ guy, it's very confusing. If you tell people you're a socialist, but you're not implementing socialist policies, it confuses everyone and it terrifies us.
Thank you, Mr. Morale. We now have 2 rebuttals. Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds, and then Mayor, you have 30 seconds.
I have been a Democrat my entire life. I am currently the Democratic nominee for mayor of Buffalo. I am a Democratic socialist. Democrat is the first word in that term. Okay? Now, when we say I'm a member of DSA, it's no different than being a member of grassroots or any organization. It means that we have similar values, and what that means is that we put workers first, we take care of poor people, we take care of children, we want to provide housing and health care for all. Simple as that. Let's put it to bed once and for all.
Thank you, Thank you, Ms. Walton. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I'm gonna come back to that fairy tale that Ms. Walton keeps telling about being a successful not-for-profit executive. Now we hear her saying she built 2 houses. That was your great success with the Fruit Belt Land Trust, 2 houses which she did not build. Habitat for Humanity built those houses. I asked the media to check the public record, and you will find it out. Now the Fruit Belt Land Trust is trying to buy those houses from Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you, Mayor.
So that they won't say they did
Thank you, Mayor.
something which they did not.
Mayor, now it's another person will tap on Ms. Walton, and that should end it. Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds.
We could have done much more had we had the cooperation of the city of Buffalo. That is part of the reason why I'm running for mayor, because I know there are so many people who do such good work in this community, and the barrier we face time after time comes from the 2nd floor of City Hall, and it's time that we end that right now.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Now we're going to move on. Mr. Miles, would you like to answer the question that was posed by Taylor Edson? Would you like for her to repeat the question?
The question again is, should there be term limits for the mayor of Buffalo?
There should be term limits for every elected office in the United States of America. Congresswomen definitely need term limits, because none of them ever run for office stating that when you elect me as your congressperson, I'm gonna sign every piece of legislation that sends $50 billion to another country. But as soon as they're elected, they sign every piece of legislation that sends $50 billion to another country. Understand this about the Democratic Party, because that's what it is, no matter how you look down that end of the situation. Right now, they control the White House, the Senate, and Congress. So they like to dangle reparations in front of people, but they can write the check right now because they control the entire situation. They can end the filibuster that Barack Obama wanted to talk about at a man's funeral. They can end the filibuster just like that because they control the House, the Senate, and the White House, the Senate, and the House of Congress. So now we look at New York State, similar statute.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Walton, would you like to answer that question?
There should be term limits.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Walton. Mayor Brown.
Yeah, I want to come back to Ms. Walton's role with the Fruit Belt Land Trust. Again, she had every requirement that any developer in the city of Buffalo has. When you buy property in the city of Buffalo, you have to buy it at appraised value. If you want to develop something, you have to follow the rules. Now she's trying to blame the 2nd floor of City Hall for her ineptitude. She was not a success. She has to be honest. You talk about building 2 houses that you didn't build. If that's how you define success, I'm amazed.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds for work on.
It's interesting that today, Mayor Brown wants to talk about what the rules are, since he is spending tons of money to skirt the rules. the fact of the matter is, as I said, we work in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. We follow the rules set forth by your Office of Strategic Planning, and the state has put out an opinion paper that says you can't in fact dispose of land for below market rate when it's gone to use for public good. That's the state's opinion on it, Mr. Brown, and you should, well, you don't have to listen to it anymore, but, I want you to know that.
Thank you.
City-owned land can be used to develop affordable housing, and you can't dispose of it at below market rate.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. We're going to just take a real brief timeout. Get our set straightened out. And you have to Taylor, the second question. Okay. A popular demand, we're going to move on. Taylor Grips of WKBW 7. Another question from our audience or online.
This question is from Jared from YouTube. He says, there's a climate energy crisis plaguing communities around the world. If elected mayor, will you build Buffalo's green infrastructure to combat climate change, and what are your policies? We should go to Mr. Miles first.
So my policies on green energy?
Yes, and climate change.
Well, there was a demonstration about climate change over the past few years in Washington DC, but I still see a lot of people throwing garbage out of their windows and littering. I just still see a lot of masks laying on the street from the COVID situation. So how are we going to fix the climate that the everyday person doesn't really put that type of interest into it? What are we to do if they're not going to do what they're to do?
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Walker.
I have a comprehensive climate justice plan in my platform. I believe I'm the only person standing here that actually has a platform at all that's publicly available. We are going to establish an office of sustainability. We are going to make sure that green jobs and green energy are a priority in our administration. And we are going to rely on the experts in climate justice to make sure that climate change is ending. We're dangerously close to the tipping point, and we have to reverse that. And the city is the largest user of electricity and carbon emissions in the area. So we have to make sure that we're greening our fleets, switching over to electric cars, that we're making sure we're making most efficient use of our energy in City Hall and city-owned buildings, and that we are recycling and composting as we should.
Thank you, Mayor Brown.
We've increased our climate focus in the city of Buffalo. We have converted lights in city buildings to LED. We plan on purchasing the city street lighting system and converting all of the street lights in the city of Buffalo to LED. We have installed pervious pavement streets to be more energy efficient in the city. And we have employees in the Department of Public Works, in the Office of Strategic Planning, that have worked collectively with our sewer authority on climate matters. We have installed bioswales in some of our parks to deal with climate issues, and we have increased recycling through our 34 and more recycling campaign. Recycling is now at the highest level in the history of the city of Buffalo.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Mr. Carlisle, you have the name.
I appreciate the question because the environment is one of my biggest focuses. Every single day when I walk to work, I walk to work. I don't drive to work. It doesn't matter if it's cold, it doesn't matter if it's hot, it doesn't matter if it's raining, it doesn't matter if it's snowing. Every single day I walk to work. And when I'm mayor, I'm gonna walk to City Hall every single day. I'm not gonna have a driver pick me up. I don't need a bodyguard. I'm gonna walk myself to City Hall every single day. Ms. Walton talks about planting trees. I plant a new tree every year. I don't just talk about it, I do it. Ms. Walton talks about community gardens. I plant a community garden every year, and I give out fresh vegetables and fruits to my neighbors and to my coworkers and to my friends. I will lead on the environment. I won't just talk about it. So when I tell you that I'm going to do something about the environment and that I'm going to use all the city's resources to make sure that we have a clean Buffalo, as clean as possible, you know that I'm telling the truth. And just to correct something that Ms. Walton said, I have put out a platform. If you go to carlisle22.com, you can find my platform. It's been publicly available for quite some time.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Ms. Walton, you got 30 seconds to respond.
I would caution Mr. Carlisle against saying that I say things and don't do them because you don't know me and you don't know what I do.
Thank you very much. Adrian Williams from the Buffalo News. Oh, we never get through you, didn't we? No. Adrian Williams of the Buffalo News. Our next question and we will start with Mr. Miles as far as the answer.
So, return to Buffalo Public Schools. Do you think the mayor's office should have more control over Buffalo Public Schools? If not, why? If yes, how do you plan to make that happen?
Okay, so I say the parents should have control over the Buffalo Public Schools, not the mayor. I am not happy with the teachers union. Our kids should be back in school. They've been doing these Zoom calls for way too long. And the best people for the job are the parents. So if you follow the Government Integrity Act, the parents get to decide what the child should be learning. It's costing $22,000 per child. $22,000 per child from kindergarten through 12th grade per child. It is a ridiculous amount. And if you're gonna spend that kind of money for a person that paid his own way when he went to high school, you should let the child decide, or the parent decide what's best for that situation. Not the Buffalo Public School, and not the Federation of the Teachers Union, or whoever gonna make the decisions. It's for the parents and the child to come together and make that decision.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Miles. Ms. Walton, you have 2 minutes.
I believe that the mayor should have.
This is for us to give us in to this work, so she's only for the radio station. Yeah, yes.
That we can answer that question. All right, sorry for the interruption. We will give you a full minute.
No problem. I don't believe the mayor should have control of this over the schools, but I do believe that the mayor's office, being one of the most influential people in the city of Buffalo, should be more involved in the decisions that are made. I don't know what school district Mr. Miles' children are in, but Buffalo is definitely back in school in person. I think that we can do a better job of reducing class sizes, providing our teachers and families with the resources they need so that we have healthy learners in our school buildings.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Mayor Brown? I work very closely with Buffalo Public Schools when the schools had to eliminate some instrumental music a few years ago. I and the city council stepped in and provided resources to maintain instrumental music in the schools. Just this year, we partnered with the schools on a very innovative Earn While You Learn program to catch our children up who had fallen behind due to the pandemic. 154 students came through that program. 21 seniors were able to graduate on time because of the resources that the city provided for Earn While You Learn. I also provide over $500,000 a year to say yes to education, to provide our children with the academic supports that they need to be successful in school, hopefully graduate on time, go on to college or career. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carlisle?
The answer to your question is yes, I think the mayor should have more control over the schools in Buffalo. In fact, I think the mayor should have control. In 2015, the state reached out to Byron Brown and they said, Mayor, if we gave you the authority, would you like to take over the Buffalo Public Schools? And he said, well, you know, I'm not really asking for it. I don't really want to, but I guess if I really have to, I will. I think that's unacceptable. If I was given the choice by the state to take over the schools, I would take over the schools because they're not working right now. As Mr. Miles stated, the amount of money we spend per student is astronomical. With the amount of money we're spending, we should have infinitely better results than we don't. So yes, if I had the opportunity as mayor to take over the Buffalo Public Schools, I would. Both of my parents were educators. My dad was a principal my entire life. My mom was an English teacher my entire life. I have a passion for education. I will put a focus on education.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Now our next questioner, Lady Ewing, anchor. All right, Mayor, the audience is asking that you get 30 seconds for the rebuttal.
So Mr. Carlisle is absolutely wrong. I was not given the opportunity to take over control of Buffalo Public Schools in 2015. If I had been given that opportunity, I would have taken over management of the Buffalo Public Schools, but the state did not offer that.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question from anchor reporter Claudine Ewing of WGRC. And This question, first answer will be from Ms. Walton.
So it's football time, it's Bills season, and we talk about a stadium. Initial reports indicate that a new Bills stadium will be at Orchard Park. Should it be in Buffalo? And then Mayor, when you have to answer this question, you have asked the Pagulas to put a dome stadium in the city of Buffalo? Should the city even propose a downtown plan? That's for everyone, especially since tax dollars are gonna be used for this.
Ms. Walton, you're first.
I'm ready.
1 minute. Okay.
I am a Bills fan through and through. I was born and raised in Buffalo. Of course, I would love to see a stadium located within the city. However, I don't want it a handful of low-wage jobs, but that there's reinvestment in the surrounding community in perpetuity.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Mayor Brown.
So with many of the development projects that the city has done, there have been community benefit agreements. And we are very proud of those agreements that we've been able to negotiate. As mayor of the city of Buffalo, I would love to see a stadium in downtown Buffalo, but the city is not a party to the stadium negotiations. That is between the state of New York, the county of Erie, and the ownership of the team. Right now, the city does not have any money in the stadium whatsoever. And I am told that estimates of a downtown stadium would range to $1 billion more than the $1.4 billion being discussed in Orchard Park.
Could the city propose some type of plan? And we know that you have close ties with the Pagulas, so have you even talked to them about this? Because it's the Buffalo Bills.
Well,
People wanna know.
obviously, I want to see the team stay here, and I have spoken to the Pagulas. But what I understand is that a stadium, because of the infrastructure that would be required, because of the property acquisition that would be required, it could add $1 billion to the cost of a new stadium in our community. And even though they play in Orchard Park, they're the Buffalo Bills.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Mr. Carlisle.
Call me crazy, but I think the Buffalo Bills should play in Buffalo, New York. And as mayor, I'm gonna fight to make sure that they do. It would be a huge boon to the city, to hotels, restaurants, bars. We would spend some money up front, sure, but it would come back to us tenfold. And the mayor says that he wasn't a part of the negotiations. I understand that maybe you don't have any legal part of the negotiations, but insert yourself. You know the people involved. Why would you pick up the phone? Why wouldn't you be an advocate for us? You say, well, as mayor, I can't really do anything. I think that's unacceptable. As mayor of Buffalo, I'll make sure that the Bills are playing in Buffalo.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Miles.
You hit the nail on the head when you said an advocate for Buffalo. That's the entire problem with the situation that we have going on here right now. But I will say, we are better served, and we already have the facility we need to bring the Buffalo Braves basketball team back to Buffalo. See, whoever negotiated the deal on behalf of the city, that Toronto would get a team and there can't be another team within 250 miles, should have thrown in a negotiation part of after 25 years or after you get a championship, Buffalo can get their team. So the Buffalo Braves were taken from here back in the 70s with a song said the Buffalo Braves are here to stay, and we already have a facility for it through the Pagulas, right downtown, that they can play their 42 home games and their playoff games and bring a championship in the NBA right here to Buffalo.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Now we'll take another question from the audience or from online. I'm sorry, Lee Pettigrew, do you have a question? And the first person to answer that would be the mayor.
Mayor Brown, it's 2021. I grew up 3 blocks from here. When I grew up in this particular neighborhood, before they built this library, there were houses on every street. Nice looking houses. When I came down Utica to come to this particular debate, it looked like somebody had bombed the neighborhood and gradually started rebuilding houses. There are some new ones. When it comes to housing in the city of Buffalo, on the west side, it's whether you can afford it. On the east side, people feel there are too many empty lots. What would you do? How would you change this? What would you do to address zombie landlords?
So housing is being addressed right now prior to my election as mayor, there was tremendous disinvestment already in the east side of Buffalo. There were thousands and thousands of vacant structures that were unsalvageable. We had to demolish over 8,000 structures in the city of Buffalo that were unsalvageable, that people were fighting dogs in, that people were selling drugs out of, that squatters were setting fires in for the protection of people that lived in this neighborhood. Now you see development coming down Jefferson Avenue, 2 new buildings on Jefferson. This library that we're in right now is one of my projects when I was a member of the city council. The Tops on Jefferson Avenue, one of my projects when I was a member of the city council. The former library on East Utica near Jefferson, the Beverly Gray Business Exchange, providing technical assistance to minority and women-owned businesses. So development is coming to this community, and there is more on the way.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carlisle.
I think it's an excellent question, because I moved to Buffalo 18 years ago. When I moved here, I toured the east side, I literally did think that a bomb went off. But it turns out that a bomb didn't go off. It turns out this city's just been run by Democrats, a Democrat mayor since 1966. It reminds me of Einstein's definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over and over again and hoping for a different result. As I stated at the beginning, I'm not running as a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not going to have any ties to any political party. I'm not going to have any donors that I'm going to have to take care of. It's just going to be putting the city first. And to your specific question, how do you address zombie landlords? I think we got to put some more teeth into the housing court, make sure that we're enforcing the rules on the books.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Miles.
So I too was born in this area on Brunswick Boulevard between Ohlers and Humboldt. So I've seen better days in the Brunswick area also, or in the Jackson area, going back to the Gales family, singing the song for Figos when they open their grocery store. So I know what this city is capable of and what it can do. So my uncle Welton had a barber shop on Ferry. My other uncle from the Johnson family, so I was raised by Hezekiah Johnson, who I consider a great man. So Hezekiah Johnson raised me, and his brother had a tailor shop on Jefferson and Union. Pinckney Reagan had a car wash there. There was all kinds of businesses throughout that area that do not thrive now. We need to take advantage of the opportunity zone that's been set up so that we can get businesses, and we can get homeowners, and we need to work with the banks so that the people that want to have homes in these areas can get a home built the way they want or buy a home that's already standing. But we need to work with the banks to get the home ownership back together. We need to work with the opportunity zones to get businesses working in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Walton.
It's disheartening to hear the east side spoken about in such terms when we know that there have been systems put in place that keep certain people in a certain condition. What stabilizes neighborhoods is not buildings and renters. We have to close the racial wealth and home ownership gap. We can build infill housing, we can do it smartly, we can do it efficiently. Community land trust, I'll keep going back to it. Reuse this public subsidy and create permanently affordable housing. I have a plan to rebuild the east side and make people feel a sense of pride in where they live. I am proud of the east side of Buffalo. I'm proud to have grown up on the east side of Buffalo. And I know that it's not our fault that things are the condition that they're in. It's the resources that have not been equitably distributed in our community that's the problem. And that's how I'm gonna tackle that as mayor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walton. Just want to remind our viewers and listeners that you can post a question at #BuffaloDebate 2021. We also have file cards for members of the audience that submit questions. Our next question is going to come from KFS. WKBW Channel 7 with a question that's not from a panel.
Yeah, good question. He says a chronic problem plaguing our city is lack of civic participation that allows corruption and voter apathy to thrive. What would you do to promote civic participation and accountability in Buffalo? Who gets that first one out?
I think it is Ms. Walton's turn to answer that first.
Oh, that question must have been meant just for me. I did shrink 3 inches in case you're wondering. But I think that civic participation needs what is happening right now. We need average, everyday people to run for office. I mean, if you see the people who turn out and show up for me, they're from all age groups, all cultures, all background, all socioeconomic statuses, and all neighborhoods. I think we also need to get back into the schools and explain to our children, explain to our young adults how you get things done. People are calling me. I haven't even won yet, but people see me on TV and they said, she must be someone who can help me. Someone called my campaign phone at 10:30 at night, a couple of nights ago. There's a dilapidated house across the street from her. It's infested with rodents. She's called the city. She's called 311. She's called the Department of Health, and no one will help her. She doesn't even know where to start. We have to get our people educated, involved. When we are dissatisfied with the status quo, we have to rise up and fight against it. You don't have to be a special person to do it. Just get up, please, and do it.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Mayor Brown. Civic participation is critically important to the city. We've implemented a number of programs to encourage citizen participation. We have a weekly block chat with block club members across the entire city of Buffalo. We have a bi-monthly chat with seniors during this pandemic, where we had to do that over the telephone to make sure that seniors weren't isolated. We have opened our district police stations on a monthly basis to have residents of the community come in with questions, concerns, ideas. So there are a number of different ways that we are engaging the public, listening to the public. We have 30 clean sweeps a year, where we go into some of the most challenged neighborhoods in the city of Buffalo. We walk door to door, listening to residents, trying to improve the quality of life, providing residents with information. That program is working. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carlisle.
I think for once tonight, I actually agree with the mayor, because one of the things I want to do as mayor, I put it on my website again, carlisle22.com, you'll see it in my proposal, is have a monthly meeting with all Black Club members, not a blog. I'm going to meet with them in person, and it's not going to be, the purpose of the meeting is not going to be for them to hear everything that I want bloviate about. It's going to be for me to sit there in person with all the Block Club presidents once a month to figure out what their concerns are, what they want the city to address. I lived on the east side for 4 years. My neighbor Sharon, she was the Rounds 1 Block Club for, I want to say, something like 20 years, but she finally stopped doing it because she said no one showed up. She got very disheartened. We need to reinvigorate our block clubs, blocks that don't have a block club. I want to help start them, and then I'm going to keep meeting with them. We're going to get ear to the ground, figure out what the problems are on the ground, and put solutions in place in City Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Miles.
We're gonna put the hips with the lips. If you're talking it, go out and walk it and do it. When I was growing up, we had a neighborhood watch program. Buffalo had a campaign that we were talking proud. It was a great commercial, Buffalo Talking Proud, back in the 80s. We were at 300 and some odd thousand people in the city, maybe 350,000 at the time, and now we're down to 220, 30, the numbers changed. They recently said we had to increase, but if we get our spirit back in Buffalo, when we're proud of where we live and what's going on and what we see around us, and not everything is based upon race or religion, because I was born on the same day Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, so I know it's the content of your character and not the color of your skin. So I hear a lot about the most diverse this and et cetera, but do you have the best person for the job, or are you doing it based upon a religion or the sexual orientation or other like that? We need to make our kids know this from growing up, that they have something special inside them before they go out and interact with anybody, a bus driver, a bus aide, or anything, and bring our kids up the right way.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Our next question from Deidre Williams of the Buffalo News, and the first person to answer the question is Mayor Brown.
So let's focus on violent crime. Gun violence is a serious problem in the city of Buffalo, and cities all across the country. But we're going to focus on the city of Buffalo. What's your plan to reduce crime? And give details, please.
So my plan is to work with other law enforcement agencies at the local, state, and federal level. We have a partnership that has helped to take guns off the streets of the city. During my tenure as mayor, we've taken over 15,000 illegal guns off the streets of the city of Buffalo. What that means is that we have a gun problem in this nation. Too many guns coming to Buffalo and coming into communities all across this country. We also have a program called Custom Notification, where at-risk youth and young adults, we go to their homes with trusted voices in the community, with trusted messengers, some of the peacemaking organizations, Stop the Violence, Peacemakers, Mad Dads, others, and let their family members know that they are at risk of violence. Those things prior to the pandemic were helping to reduce gun violence and crime in the city of Buffalo. Thank you, Mayor Brown. Mr. Carlisle.
The mayor keeps talking about the pandemic. He says that all cities during the pandemic saw a rise in crime. That's not true. The pandemic didn't cause it, the lockdowns did. If you look at the cities that didn't lock down the way we locked down, if you look at the cities and the states that didn't close their schools for the entirety of last year, they did not have the problems we had. In 2019, we actually had a pretty good year. In 2019, shootings were down to their lowest level since 2011. As I already stated, in 2020, the shootings went up 90% compared to 2019. One of the main things I'll do as Mayor of Buffalo to address violent crime is to make sure that Democrats never, ever, ever close down our schools again, never close down our economy again. It's not gonna happen under my watch.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Miles.
So law enforcement is under siege by liberal activists, which is why I don't want an activist for a mayor or an activist sympathizer for a mayor. We need to increase law enforcement. We need to have additional stations. We're gonna increase the patrol, split patrol, bike. I'm sorry. Sure. Okay.
It's your time.
Well, she's talking.
Sure, John.
All right. And then we need to bring back the housing police. And one of the things I would do the most is I would put more drones in the air. We currently only have 2 drone operators available, 2 qualified drone operators. I think we should have more drones in the air to check out the hotspots in the area. And I know we all agree that we should bring back capital punishment. That penalty should be back on the table. I know we all agree. Hold on. No, so you can chuckle, you can laugh, but Andrew Cuomo lit up a skyline to celebrate the Born Alive bill. So that is not murder. Okay, laugh it up, Furball, but if that's not murder, then I don't know what to tell you.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Walton.
I just want to take a moment to remind everyone that we are Jefferson and Utica. Activism is what allowed us to be in this room all together, sitting side by side. As far as violent crime is concerned, I'm going to give the people what they're actually asking for. Arrests are up, we've taken guns off the street, and crime rates are not down, shootings are not down. A little boy was murdered this summer. People are asking for crime prevention through environmental designs. Why are there still streets that are not well lit? You know, everything doesn't have to be extra enforcement. And again, we're doing the same thing over and over again, not reevaluating and not trying anything new. It's just time for a change. And I'm a leader that if we try it and it doesn't work, then guess what? We try something else. We don't keep doing what's ineffective if it doesn't work.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. First, I just a couple of seconds to thank everybody for being so courteous. Hopefully, we are learning a lot about the candidates, and just for 20 more minutes, hopefully everyone can continue to be patient and courteous for panelists, fellow audience members, and to our candidates. The next question from Claudine Ewing from WGRZ, and that question will go to Mr. Carlisle.
If you are mayor, will you raise taxes on the people? Mr. Miles?
Oh, no, absolutely not. And we're also going to clear your arrears on the trash fee. The trash fee was supposed to be a temporary thing, and it's been around for 20-something years, so we need to take care of the trash fee and clear your arrears also.
And specifically for Ms. Walton, I know when we had an interview, you talked about one day wanting to become a homeowner. It's something you want to do. How do you empathize with the people, and would you raise taxes?
I do empathize, Claudine, and what I can tell you is that door after door I've knocked on, people say a modest increase in taxes, as long as we can fund city services, they're more than willing to do. Folks are confused as to why we have a city budget that relies on fines and fees to fill in the holes. Let's be real, before the American Rescue Plan was coming, we were at a $65 million deficit. We've had our rainy day fund spent down $100 million. We are not bringing in the ethical revenue to keep our city going. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to look at a modest incremental tax increase in order to balance our books.
So just so you're clear, no, yes, you will raise taxes. Remember.
I'm glad Mr. Walton.
Mike,
not working. I'm glad Ms. Walton admitted honestly that she's going to raise taxes on residents of the city of Buffalo. In fact, she said in an interview that she's going to raise taxes by 3%. 3% is not a modest tax increase. If you own a Buffalo, $300 a year. So she talks about fees and fines, which we've already eliminated 15 fees and fines in the city of Buffalo, but she wants to raise your taxes on the other hand. It's a shell game with Ms. Walton. She's making a false promise. It doesn't add up. And I'm glad today that she admitted she wants to raise taxes. During my entire tenure as mayor, we have either held the line on taxes or cut taxes in the city of Buffalo.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Ms. Walton, you got 30 seconds to respond.
Fines and fees were not eliminated under the mayor's own volition. It was the Fair Fines and Fees Coalition that did that work, and you were compelled to do it because the community outrage was so great that you didn't have any other choice. That is called political will. The exciting thing about me running for mayor is now people don't have to fight and scream in order for me to just do what's right. Yes, I'm going to be honest, and yes, I said there will be an incremental tax increase, and we are going to protect legacy homeowners the same way we did with Assemblywoman Chris Stokes in the Brookville neighborhood. You remember that, right?
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Our next question from Nick WUFO. And the first person to answer will be Mr. Miles.
Mr. Miles, there's a lot of talk about, in this room today, about the problem with homicides in America was the quarantine. The violent situation in the United States was caused by the pandemic. There was a gentleman who passed away a year ago, maybe less than a year, who talked about the real problem in America, and that's access to weapons illegally. What do you think you would do as mayor to keep illegal handguns off the streets of Buffalo?
I back the Second Amendment, so I want everyone that is legally licensed to have a concealed carry permit to have one.
Would that keep illegal handguns off the streets of Buffalo?
Okay, well, if Barack Obama didn't put 2,500 guns in Mexico and call Fast and Furious,
Barack Obama's not running for mayor.
but I'm explaining how some of these weapons get out there when the Democrats don't want us armed, but they gave the Taliban their own MAGA. So the Taliban has made Afghanistan glory again. The Taliban has their own MAGA due to the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, but they want to stifle an American citizen from not having a concealed carry permit. Now, the best way to not have these guns on the street is for them not to be getting dropped off at train tracks, as they have been in the past. You read back in the 80s, where people have found cases of guns next to train tracks in LA and California and other places. Those guns matriculate their way through here, whether it's Indiana, Ohio, and other places. They make their way to Buffalo. If it's happening in Buffalo, it happens in Jamestown, Watertown, and other places. So all of our law enforcement needs to get together on that, and our government needs to do something about it. Because if every underprivileged person was insured for life insurance for $500,000, a lot less shootings.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Walton.
I would support both federal and state legislation to have stricter gun control and also hold gun manufacturers liable for illegal guns coming into our community. But I think the most important way that we reduce violent crime is by increasing resources to communities, by increasing home ownership, by reducing poverty, by creating decent living wage jobs, to give our young people something to live for, some hope for the future so that they're not out here in moments of desperation harming one another.
Thank you, Ms. Walton.
Again, Ms. Walton shows her lack of experience and qualification for this job. She said that she would hold gun manufacturers liable. As mayor of the city of Buffalo, you can't hold gun manufacturers liable. What that activist who passed away, his name is Neil Dobbins, and he was a champion of this community, a champion for taking illegal guns off the street. He was pushing for the repeal of the T-Hart Amendment, which makes it impossible to trace guns and to provide that trace data to communities. That is what we need to see happen at the federal level. That amendment needs to be repealed because it has helped the proliferation of illegal guns on the streets of this city and cities all across America.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds.
My mic, oh, there we go. I just want to clarify that what I actually said, had you listened, was that I support state and federal legislation that holds gun manufacturers liable, not that I would do it as mayor.
Thank you.
It came out of my mouth, I'm certain that's what I said.
Thank you,
You can play it back later.
Mr. Carlisle.
I don't support stricter gun laws. New York already has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. Chicago has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. What we've seen over and over again is you can pass as many laws as you want. That's not going to get to the root of the problem. And more often than not, they have unintended consequences. We have these great laws against drugs, but what they end up doing is disproportionately affecting minority communities. We have all these laws against guns. They end up disproportionately affecting minority communities. I think we need to address the root problems. One of the big problems is kids not being in school, and when they graduate, not finding jobs. Every single place in this town, I know that's a little hyperbolic, it's not every single place, but it's just about everyone is hiring right now. We need to show our kids direction, we need to show them that hard work pays off. I don't think the solution is more gun laws, because I think it's just gonna put more minorities in jail. I don't think the solution is more drug laws, because I think it's just gonna put more minorities in jail.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Now, audience participation portion, Taylor Epps, with our next question from the audience or from online.
This question is from the audience. It says, what does your first 100 days look like?
Ms. Walton, you are now first person to answer that question.
My first 100 days looks very much like my campaign, being out in the community, meeting with community members, finding out what their wants and needs are. We're going to have a full audit of the city finances very soon, because we're going to have to get into the budget and putting together a very experienced and qualified team, making sure that we have the best qualified people to right our ship and get our city on the right track.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Mr. Brown.
So tonight I feel like a three-way punching bag. I'm taking fire from all angles. But let me just say, during my time as mayor, state senator, Maston district council member, I worked 7 days a week for this community. I put 7 days a week in for this community. I've been knocking on doors all summer too, and when I knock on doors, you know what people tell me? They don't know any of these people who are up on the stage with me. They don't know anything that they have done. And you know what the young people tell me about Ms. Walton? That her credits don't add up, that her references don't check out. This is not a job for on-the-job training. This is a job that takes service.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds on this one.
I mean, you've been mayor for 16 years. I would expect that everyone would know who you are, but the fact of the matter is that I won the Democratic primary. I'm not even sure why I'm standing up here.
I think it's a fair point that before tonight, a lot of people in Buffalo didn't know me. But I hope after tonight that a lot of people do know me, that they look at my website, that they check out my policy proposals. My first 100 days is going to be getting to know the people that I'll be working with in City Hall. I'm in City Hall a lot. I deal with City Hall a lot in my capacity as an attorney, but also in my capacity as a homeowner and a landlord. There's some excellent people in City Hall. I want to find the people that want to stay, that want to work with me, and the people that don't, I'm going to have to find replacements. That's what my first 100 days are going to look like.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle.
So on my behalf, I have to say that the mayor's pay-to-play scheme shut down tailor-made food and made it harder for me to be active the way I've lived in the past 3 or 4 years, to be more, let's say, known or credible, as you would like to put it. On the second half of that, the first 100 days of my administration is going to be getting the police back to doing what their job is supposed to be. They are not crossing guards and they're not school monitors. They're going to be getting back to work and making the city safe. Beyond making the city safe, we're going to get back to getting our BMHA taken care of. We have a lot of the dilapidated buildings in that area that need a lot of work. So we need to bring up the spirit of our people, start working on these houses, get this landlord situation straightened out, because it's amazing how many people that work in public service that own homes is going to benefit from this landlord rental agreement situation. So we need to make sure everything's on up and up and get our police back to work, get kids back in school safely, and let's go miles together, Buffalo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miles. Now, we're getting down to the last couple of questions here. Question.
I did say that, sir.
I'm sorry, Mayor, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Again, I don't know who this guy is, so I'm not even gonna comment on that. But just let me say, Ms. Walton again showed her lack of experience and lack of understanding of how the process works. When you win a primary, you don't win an election. Every election is a primary and general election. So yes, you are the Democratic nominee, but let's look at the results on November 2nd.
Thank you, Ms. Walton, you have 30 seconds.
Every primary in history has resulted in the presumptive next mayor. Because it's me, you want new rules created. Yes. You ran as a Democrat. You used to be the head of the state Democratic Party, and now you want to create a new party for a second chance when you should have just ran the first time.
Thank you. That's for the audience patience on this. A question from the audience. And Taylor Epps, you can ask our next question.
This question is from Roscoe Henderson. It says, I'm always interested in an individual that gives back to the community. The question is, how have you given back to the community through volunteering your time?
First to answer that is Ms. Walton.
Oh, where do I start? I mean, my service into the community is in my blood. Everything that I've done, whether it's in the pandemic, doing mutual aid. I already said that when people need help, they call me, and whether it has to come out of my own pocket or whether I'm working with coalition or making referrals to other people, service is what I do. It's what I've always done, and that's what I'm going to continue to do as Mayor of Buffalo.
Thank you, Mayor Brown.
So I've given back to the community over the years in many ways during the course of the pandemic, which was one of the greatest challenges that our community has ever experienced. We delivered food to people, we delivered food to our first responders, we provided personal protective equipment to people, we provided food to our school children in homes. But I want to focus on the work of our police officers and firefighters and first responders during the pandemic. They are the heroes that gave of their time. Many donated time back to this community. And I want to use this opportunity to thank our police officers, our firefighters, and our first responders, nurses, doctors, for what they did during this pandemic.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Mr.
After law school, I worked for legal aid. It was a job I did moonlighting in addition to my regular job, which is a civil litigation attorney. And working for legal aid, they do pay you some money, but they encourage the attorneys that volunteer for legal aid or not volunteer, that work for legal aid to write down as many of their hours as they could. Because this is something I was moonlighting with supplemental income, I wrote down as many hours as I could. I did that again for several years. I also have a passion for affordable housing. When I was in law school, I was the co-editor-in-chief of the ABA Journal of Affordable Housing and Community Development Law. Over the years, I've purchased a few houses in Buffalo, fixed them up, and I've rented them out. I have never once increased rent on a renter. I've always found renters that work with me, I work with them. I've never made them do a background check. I've never made them to submit their credit check, anything like that. I've always been able to.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Mott.
Okay, so once again, I have tailor-made food. So for the last 15 or 20 years, I've been essentially in a hamburger and hot dog business of a vendor, doing holler hoagies and bacon ribs and bacon wrapped chicken and that kind of thing. So when I say pay to play, I mean that this man and Richard Fontana, who lied to a veteran United States Army, shut down my business, took me to court over it, and had me held up in court. What's going to be on 2 or 3 years now, come this January. So they can act like they don't know what they're talking about. But I interviewed that man at the ballpark when he first got elected 15 or 16 years ago. He knows Jazz Miles, he knows Sports Blast TV, and he knows tailor-made food. I am not going to be standing up here and be made up like this by the Democratic Party, who has run this city into the ground, and 22 to 25 other cities like that across this country.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Mayor Brown, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Okay, let me be clear for the record. I do not know Jazz Miles. And after tonight, I don't want to know Jazz.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. We have time for Just for clarification on what just happened. 30 seconds is allowed for the rebuttal to a personal attack. We have said that we are not going to have counter rebuttals. You were asking for a counter rebuttal, which is not part of our debate tonight. The last question, and if the Williams from Buffalo News. Everything.
The legalized marijuana industry is kickstarting. How do you plan to ensure minority entrepreneurs and communities of color in Buffalo benefit in the sales, growing, and distribution marketplace?
Mayor Brown, you were the first to answer.
So we, come on, y'all.
We think it's critically important that Black and brown communities be able to participate in this industry that has stigmatized and criminalized Black and brown communities for decades. I am very pleased that we have a champion in Albany fighting for this community in Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, who has put in all kinds of provisions and protections to make sure that there is minority participation, that is participation of Black and brown communities. As mayor of the city of Buffalo, I will do everything that I can legally do to make sure that communities of color are able to benefit from this industry coming into our community.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Mr. Carlisle.
Commitment from the mayor, but as the mayor indicated, this is largely something that's regulated by the state. I don't think the mayor of Buffalo's gonna have a whole lot of control of that, but to the extent that I can insert myself in that process and have a positive benefit in the communities that have suffered the most with these ridiculous drug laws, in my opinion, I'll do everything in my power to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mr. Miles.
I personally would prefer that none of the actual facilities are in neighborhoods, like where schools are, close to schools, around children. For the longest time, we've had a drug zone where you have to be X amount of feet away from the school for anything like that to happen. So we should continue to make sure that the community is protected as possible, while it is as available as possible for all that needed for any kind of pain or discomfort.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Walton.
I am proud. I am proud to
Microphone, please.
I didn't really mean to, but I also am proud to have a strong advocate in Albany, the author and sponsor of the MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, and I'm also proud to have been the Western New York lead on the campaign to legalize adult use cannabis. I have intimate knowledge of the state level law. I'm gonna work very closely with the Office of Cannabis Management and make sure that licensing and zoning is done in a way that prioritizes the communities that have suffered so long from prohibition.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. That wraps up our questions from the panelists, from the audience, and the public. Now, each of our candidates will have 1 minute for a closing statement. And as per ground rules, we are going in reverse order, starting with Mr. Miles.
So as you can tell, or you see, we have been dealt the raw deal going back to the Great Society. In the 1960s, 40% of Black community owned their own businesses. 87% of our homes were two-parent homes. Nowadays, it's less than 7% that own their own businesses, and 25% are two-parent homes. Well, what happened? There are things that we need to fix in our community. And after the 60s, it brought us our Vietnam Veterans Home and a return to readjustment of our soldiers. We had a welfare state that kept fathers out of the home in exchange for rent, food stamps, other benefits. The 1970s brought us the crack epidemic. The 1980s brought us the HIV epidemic. And in the 1990s, we had the crime bill that put more Black men in prison and separated them from their children than anything in the history of our life. So the crime bill should have had something called the Fathers Behind Bars bill with it, so that the fathers could still be integrated and interacting with their children that were called the super predators and that are out here for the past 15 or 20 years in our 10th most dangerous city in America.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Mr. Carlisle.
First, just want to thank the WFO and the Buffalo Association of Black Journalists for inviting me here tonight. I think it was an excellent exchange of ideas from all the candidates. I'm very proud to be involved in this tonight. As I stated at the beginning, the media has told us we really only have two choices: socialism and the status quo. I hope after tonight you understand that there are additional choices in this race. We have a very narrow opportunity to get on the ballot if the second circuit rules a certain way, And if we get enough signatures in time, that is why this Sunday, I'll be out at the Bills, supporting the Bills this Sunday. And if anyone wants to stop by, chat with me, discuss our plan for Buffalo going forward, I'd love to meet everybody in Buffalo who's going to be out at the stadium on Sunday. If you want to sign my petition, that's great. If you just want to give me an earful, that'd be great too. Go Bills.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Mayor Brown.
I thank the Association of Black Journalists, WUFO, WKBW, and all those responsible for organizing tonight's debate. The choice in this election couldn't be more clear. It's a choice between proven results and false, empty promises. During my tenure as mayor, we've been able to cut taxes by 16%. We've seen our property values go up in every section of the city of Buffalo. We've seen billions of dollars in economic development and thousands of jobs created. We've seen the Northland Workforce Training Center built on the east side of Buffalo, training hundreds of people in advanced manufacturing so that they can create opportunities for themselves and their families. On the November 2nd general election, I'm asking every voter, more than 155,000 of you, for your prayers, for your support, and your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Walton.
We've heard from a variety of candidates tonight, some of whom are meeting for the first time, and one who's years to make the change that we need and who's failed. This is our moment. For so long, we needed bold, competent leadership. For so long, we needed ground-up economic development, affordable housing. For so long, we needed an effective approach to public safety. And for too long, we needed to end corruption in City Hall. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to get the change that we need. Don't let a coordinated smear and fear campaign steal that away. We have the most dedicated civil servants. City Hall employees, y'all are safe. I'm not gonna fire everybody, it's been what I do. We have the most visionary community leaders and the most caring residents of any city on earth. I cannot wait to build the city that we know we all are together as the first woman to be mayor of Buffalo, New York. Vote for me November 2nd.
That concludes our debate tonight. And we just want to thank the audience for being courteous and patient to your neighbors and to everyone here. And just to reintroduce the folks who have been up here that hopefully you have heard from, learned something about our candidates. Walton, Mayor Brown, Mr. Carlisle, and Mr. Miles. And for the moment you've been waiting for, now you can cheer. Everybody have a safe home and remember to vote legally.